the intro and everything for the podcast. Definitely. So I think the sound thing maybe because I have like the headphones plugged into the mic directly. I don't know. It's like a different setting now because of that. Whatever. Something maybe because I have like this headphone. I got to turn the sound off there. All right, just a sound check for everybody so I can make sure that Audacity is picking you up. Ryan, go ahead and say something.
Hello, test 1 2.
All right. Somebody just in the background there. Kev, go ahead. God damn, that's loud. Holy cow.
They're coming to get me. I'm out.
All right, I muted Ryan. Kev, why don't you go ahead and say something?
Man, I gotta go. The cops are out to come get me.
Yeah, they're after you, buddy. I think it's the hat. Ryan, you're muted, man. We can't hear you. You gotta unmute yourself.
I didn't realize I was muted. I said that's just Chicago. We call that ambiance here.
Oh, I like that ambiance. All right. Those of you joining us on YouTube, thank you so much for joining this live recording of our weekly podcast, the TFA Podcast, to be more specific. Today we're going to be covering Week 4, a little bit of Week 5, best of the rest, and some quarterly discussion on the best and worst fantasy players so far. Of course, you're going to hear me say that again when I introduce the podcast and say, hey, welcome back to the podcast. This is what we're going to be talking about tonight. So now you get to hear it twice. Lucky you. Sound check worked out, guys, so it looks like we are ready to go. You guys ready to get this thing started?
Let's do it.
Okay, remember to hit the mute button if you're not talking, just so we don't hear any typing or any random background noise that we don't want to hear. That way it makes my editing job a little bit easier. I'll try to do the same because the last few episodes I've been maybe the number one culprit with background noise, so go me. All right, let's get started. In 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the Fantasy Authority Podcast, episode number 64. We are a quarter of the way through the NFL season already. That makes me very, very sad, and I'm sure it makes you sad as well. So, tonight we're going to be talking about top fantasy players so far, disappointing fantasy players so far, what to expect from them the rest of the season. We're also going to throw in the biggest storylines of Week 4, some streaming options for you for Week 5, and then the best of the rest, our post-waiver options that you should look to target once your waiver wire has completed for the week. I, of course, am your host, Anthony Pinzone. Alongside me, I have Kevin Steele and Ryan Williams, the same trio you've seen on this past Sunday's game day show. How we doing today, fellas?
Doing good. Ready to rock it.
I know, we're already a quarter way through the year. Where does the time go? Where does the time go?
Flying. It's gone. It's flying away. For those of you who are all-around sports fans, it's October baseball time, so there is playoff baseball going on if you are interested in that. We're not going to be talking about it, but I feel like I should just mention it because it's an important thing in the sports world. The Ryder Cup just happened over the weekend, guys. I don't know if you guys are into golf at all, but yeah, me either. So let's get into football because nobody else cares about any of that other stuff. The biggest headlines of Week 4. Let me start that again. So, guys, let's get into the biggest stories of Week 4 and some stories heading into Week 5. How about Eric Decker? Talked a little bit about this on Sunday. He could miss the rest of the season. That's brutal for Ryan Fitzpatrick, but great for Quincy Enunwa.
Yeah, I think I saw today that he said he's feeling a little bit better, but still experiencing pain there. Like we mentioned last week, that he said that even if he's able to play this year, he's not going to be 100% the rest of the season. So I think right now it's just a pain tolerance thing, and if he can get back, but like I mentioned, if he's not 100%, and obviously a rotator cuff, it's obviously a big deal for a wide receiver, and if he's limited at all, then I don't know. Like, I think it may make more sense to shut him down than but I love Quincy Enunwa, and I'm shocked, to be honest, that he is still available in over 60% of both Yahoo and ESPN leagues because, I mean, this news came out last Wednesday. So, like, why people didn't run to the waiver wire to add him is beyond me. He's been getting the targets regardless and has been pretty productive so far. So I don't really get that, to be honest with you. Maybe one week the community will jump on board the Quincy Enunwa bandwagon, but if not, right now, if you're needing a wide receiver, he is the number one guy that I would add this week.
2 words: Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, that's scaring a lot of people off, I would think. So I think that people are waiting to see how he probably does. Maybe in this matchup coming up against Pittsburgh. But yeah, no, I agree. I mean, definitely in PPR leagues, I don't think you can wait on him. I think that now is the time to pick him up because with that rotator cuff injury for Decker, I mean that's going to be affecting him all year. It's like that's going to control his movement and his ability to catch the football. And even if he comes back, guys on the defensive side are going to know that. They're going to know that's affecting him. So they're going to be, pushing him around and kind of jamming him at the line to kind of get that shoulder affected. So, get a Enunwa in PPR leagues, and then maybe, you kind of want to see what his usage is. That's fine in standard leagues, but he should be on your watch list.
Speaking of the Jets and Ryan Fitzpatrick, guys, 9 interceptions over the last 2 games. Is it time for the Geno Smith era?
I mean, y'all already know what I think. I said this over the preseason, and I thought that they didn't need to go out and get Ryan Fitzpatrick. I never thought Ryan Fitzpatrick was that great of a quarterback, and so like this doesn't surprise me one bit. Like I think we're seeing Ryan Fitzpatrick turn back into a pumpkin, which is what he's been his entire career. So I don't know. Like I think if you're the Jets and you don't want to see this season go down the drain, maybe you make the move. I mean, you only have 1 year invested in Ryan Fitzpatrick, so I would at least maybe give Geno Smith a look to see if he can do something better. Because right now, I mean that's a horror. I mean that's like a couple pick sixes away from Matt Schaub status right there for Ryan Fitzpatrick. I mean, I just don't know if you can continue to roll with him on a weekly basis because I mean he is just killing the team, and I mean. Like I said, Geno Smith, and another thing that people forget about is he actually won that job out of training camp. But then he got his jaw broken, which caused him the season, which obviously cost him that job, and let Ryan Fitzpatrick take over. Which Ryan Fitzpatrick was great last year, but he crumbled down the stretch and crumbled in the playoffs. So I mean, he's not a long-term answer. So if he continues this pace right now, I mean that's the 9 interceptions is beyond anything I think anybody could have imagined, but. I don't know. I think I would at least entertain the idea of bringing in Geno Smith.
Oh, Jets fans are going to be really sad to hear you say that. But can you do worse? Maybe. It's possible, right? Speaking of quarterback situations, guys, a lot of news happening with the quarterbacks this week. Good and bad. On the good side, Tom Brady returns. The Patriots lost, though, so they went 3-1 without him. There was a funny tweet out there from the guy who does Tosh.0. I can never remember his name. It's Tosh something. But he said
Daniel Tosh.
There you go, Daniel Tosh. Congratulations, Tom Brady. Your team went 3-1 without you, just proving that you're not the best quarterback in the league. Brutal. Going at him hard. But he does return, so that's good news for the Patriots and good news for Tom Brady owners, those of you who have been very patient waiting for Tom to return. It looks like he's going to have himself quite the team to return to. I expect him to easily slide into that QB1 status right away. So against the Cleveland Browns, too. God, could he come back to more of a cake matchup than the Browns? Poor Brownies. 0-5, here they come. How about Matt Ryan as well? 500 passing yards, over 500 passing yards and 4 touchdowns this week, threw 300 yards to Julio Jones. They both broke Atlanta Falcons records, passing record, receiving record, the whole 9. Both of them broken, shattered.
It's, oh my God, disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting.
Only 1 touchdown for Julio, right?
Yeah, one touchdown. But I mean,
those touchdowns elude him. What is the problem with them getting Julio in the end zone? I don't get it.
Well, it was just frustrating to even go back and watch that game because, I mean, with Ron Rivera being a defensive mind, there's no way in hell you go into that game with the defensive unit that they have and say, you know what's a great idea? If we go out there with these young cornerbacks and play Julio one-on-one, that's going to end great for us on this Sunday. That's going to be
sorry. Ryan, I had to mute you again. We'll just you said that's going to be great for us. We'll pick up when the sirens stop.
Okay.
Luckily we are recording live, but people know we're actually recording this for editing, so that's fine. So you said that's going to be great for us was the last line before I kind of have to cut you off and edit from there. So you can just continue from that point.
Okay.
Whenever you're ready.
So yeah, it just makes no sense that they would go in with that mindset. I mean, they don't have Norman anymore, and you could get away with that when you had that type of threat. Who can match up one-on-one. They don't have that anymore. They should have been going out there and doing at least a bracket type of coverage, and I'm really frustrated just because I leaned against not playing Julio in DFS because of this reason, because I thought they would bracket cover him, and then you're watching the game and you see that this is single coverage. I mean, after they give him the ball, they start laughing about it. I mean, that's what Atlanta was like, this is a joke, right? Like, then he continued to just feed him all day, except for in the red zone. But they finally caught on to it in the second half. But even then, he was still able to get that touchdown on him in the fourth quarter. It was just baffling. I can't even believe that was what happened. I mean, that was embarrassing.
Well, and I remember on Sunday we talked about that on the game day show about that very thing, and about if you go back and you look at who Carolina had played previously, they hadn't been tested yet through the air by anybody. I mean, they played the Broncos on the first week of the season against Trevor Siemian. They played Sam Bradford. So at that point, they hadn't really been challenged by anybody yet, and so but I felt like this was going to be their greatest challenge, and I too am kicking myself for not playing him in DFS. And I even had him in some lineups, and I pivot off of them, and I felt like just the biggest, real lack of a better word, dumbass the entire day, just because I'm like, I cannot believe I did that. Like, I liked him, and then I changed my mind. That's why you don't change. That's why you don't tinker with stuff, because that's what ends up happening. But like, I think it's a real problem for Carolina. Like, yeah, we could say that this is a one-time deal. Like, we know Carolina's front seven is still elite, but their secondary is awful right now. Their safety play has been awful. They were leaning on a rookie corner to try to stop Julio Jones. Like, come on, really? Like, it goes to your point of, like, that's really – you thought that was going to be a good idea? And what about an in-game adjustment? You figure out, okay, this isn't working out the way we wanted it to. Maybe we should give them some help and try to shut him down. And never happened. And so I don't know. But, like, I'm more impressed as well with Matt Ryan, because – I think, like, heading into the season, he was a guy that I really did like as a bounce-back guy, but I didn't see QB1. I mean, he's QB1 right now in fantasy through 4 weeks, and he just continues to fly every single week. I mean, continues to put up numbers, and the offense as a whole is, running on all cylinders. Now, of course, they meet Denver this week, which I would temper your expectations that, this week, because, Denver still has all their pieces along their defensive side and have just been elite so far this year, so – but other than that, I mean, I'm really surprised at really more so than anything, Matt Ryan and his just consistent play.
Oh, yeah. I'm surprised too. Sorry, Ryan. It's just not a big Matt Ryan fan myself going into the season. And, I even remember saying to you, because you mentioned that the Atlanta Falcons could contend for the division, and I pretty much just laughed at you, Kev, because I didn't think that was actually a possibility. I figured it was going to be the same old Falcons, and they were going to, and it still could happen. We're only 4 weeks in. I figured they were going to come out hot and then slow down. And like last year, we mentioned before, they started 5-0, they finished 8-8. So we aren't to that point yet. If we can see that they can continue it, but man, they look good so far. Good test this weekend against the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, and speaking of guys you guys kind of laughed at, was I think with the majority picked the Arizona Cardinals to win the Super Bowl. How do you feel about that now?
I still take it back. I do.
Yeah, I still like it too. I mean, we're like we said, we're a quarter of the way through. It's not time to overreact. All right. Obviously, we got to wait and see what's going on with Palmer. I mean, that's essentially what it all comes down to. Because if you're throwing out Drew Stanton, for any number of weeks, and just a concussion protocol that Palmer's in, but still something to monitor. If Drew Stanton's out there for a couple of weeks, it's going to be ugly. I mean, David Johnson, I think he's a great running back. I think, him, Le'Veon Bell, 1A, 1B, in my opinion. That's coming from a Steelers fan too. He's dynamic, but you need a quarterback back there who can be a general and move the ball. And Palmer was doing that, last year, and that's why we saw the Cardinals go as far as they were. And now he's coming out and on the offensive line, not getting him time, but he's also taking his sweet time back there in the pocket. Michael Floyd's been giving him frustrations. So, we saw him get back with John Brown's coming back. So he's in a groove right now. Fitzgerald he needs to start coming around and play like the receiver he was week 1. So they just are going through some things right now, but the defense, I think, can still, keep things level to get them where they need to be.
Do you guys think there's any chance that... What the hell? Why can't I hear myself all of a sudden?
It's gone now.
Well, that was strange. Okay. Do you guys think there's any chance that the Arizona Cardinals kind of pull a... What? Where is it? Do you have headphones in, Ryan, or you have speakers going?
No, I just got my computer going, speakers.
All right, just mute it for a second, see if we still hear myself. I don't know why it would just suddenly be picking it up, but it's possible.
Okay.
Hello, test.
Well, I don't know. It's tough because it came one way, but...
Yeah, it keeps coming and going. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Do you guys think there's any chance that the Arizona Cardinals do a similar deal like Minnesota did when they lost Bridgewater? Now, I know this isn't the same situation, right? Palmer's in concussion protocol, but say that Palmer does miss a significant amount of time, or he does get a serious injury, or maybe he just doesn't get better. Is there a chance Arizona could trade for a quarterback here? Off the top of my head, I'm thinking A.J. McCarron over there in Cincinnati. Not that I think they would get rid of him, because why would you? He proved to be a reliable backup, and maybe even more than that once the Dalton days are done. But any chance that Arizona could be looking to make a move at quarterback? Because Drew Stanton's not going to do anything for you. He came in and threw 2 interceptions.
Well, I think from listening to Bruce Arians today, it sounds like that there's a real chance that Carlos Palmer plays this week. So he did say that today. That he thought there was a pretty good shot of him playing. Of course, it's on short rest, but I think at the most, if they're that confident in him already, then I think that at the most this is a 1-week deal, and they're playing the 49ers. So I don't think this is something that you would have to make that sort of move towards. And I don't think in season you're going to be paying a even probably steeper price for an A.J. McCarron or a player of that, of that nature. So I don't think that's going to happen. I think you ride with Carson Palmer, and if something happens, then you're kind of, you're there. You're stuck with what you got. But I don't know. I don't think anybody saw this coming, this sort of start for them. I mean, they've been awful so far this year. I mean, they really, outside of the 1 week, they've been. I mean, they got their ass handed to them by the Bills. I mean, they got beat by the Rams, at home. I mean, I don't know. So I'm a little concerned with that. And to be honest, Seattle's kind of pulling themselves away. They're not coming down from earth anytime soon. And just the rest of the NFC, I mean, they if they don't get it turned around quickly, I mean, they could be out of the playoffs. I mean, they're 1-3 right now, and so I don't know. I think it's a real concern if they were to lose this game and go to 1-4. You could, I mean, yeah, of course, we saw last year, Kansas City, for example, went 1-5 and went off and won 11 in a row. But I don't know. I mean, that's something that's not the norm that usually happens.
You're almost done at that point, though. I mean, if you're 1-4. You got to be what? You got to win 10, 11 games to make it in the NFC, I would say. So
Yeah.
you have to go, what, 11-1, 10-2 the rest of the year? That's tough.
Yeah, it's going to be ugly. And like Kev said, I mean, this is where they need to be, firing on all cylinders right now. I mean, Seattle is up there and they're looking fine with a banged up Russell Wilson. I mean, once he gets healthy, you're going to be in a big battle, for that. And they got some important games coming up. I mean, they got the Thursday night game coming up here. They got the Jets coming there, I believe, the week after that, and then they got that Seattle game the week after that. So these next 3 games are super important for them. If they can get wins in all 3 of these games, I think that everything goes to the wayside. But yeah, if they start struggling in one of these next 3 games, it's going to be very, very bleak for the Arizona Cardinals going forward, which was my pick to be in the Super Bowl. So I'm hoping they can turn it around.
I know my pick of me and Jeff's pick of Seattle against New England is still looking mighty fine, if I might add.
I think I picked Arizona versus New England, so at least I'm 50% looking good. Arizona, oh, what a disappointment so far. And they play San Francisco this week, who looks like an easy matchup on paper, but San Francisco has been playing hard. They've been playing really well. They're the only loss for the 3-1. LA Rams, led by the Jeff Fisher. Shocker there. I just said that. Yes, the Rams are 3-1.
Yeah, but that is a complete, that's a farce. That's not going to continue. That offense is so bad.
There's some bad quarterback news other than Carson Palmer. How about Cam Newton? Similar situation here in Carolina. They're 1-3. Cam Newton also out with a concussion, and he is questionable for Monday night. Well, Carson Palmer might play this Thursday, and Cam is questionable for Monday. So clearly, he got the worst deal on this one.
It's time for him to start protecting himself, though. He's got to start protecting himself and stop. He is such a massive human being that I think he sometimes I don't know. He just plays so hard all the time, and it's he just sort of forgets to protect himself. And he's taken way too many big shots this year, and it's just he just lends himself every single time. It's this past game on Sunday where he got rocked. It's he thought that the defender was just going to stop. He just kind of started walking towards the end zone it was all good. The defender was just going to stop and let him run right in, and he took one right to the head. But it's been a theme so far for him this year, and if he doesn't start protecting himself, we're going to start seeing a lot of Derek Anderson in in the future.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance yet to watch the film of that game, partially because I was disappointed because I do have Cam on a lot of teams, and he obviously didn't have as good of a week as I thought he did. So it's kind of been hard for me to get back to go and watch that. But I have heard about the hit at the goal line where he apparently just thought he was strolling in and then takes that hit there and gets knocked out of the game. But yeah, like you said, I mean, this is he's taken hits. I mean, he was sacked 8 times against Minnesota a week ago. He's just got to be smarter. He's got to be more mature, and he needs to start thinking about himself as the face of this team, because the team, relies on him heavily, more so than probably, he's probably top 3 as far as in the NFL of players who carry their team, so to speak, on their back. And so he needs to start, thinking about things that way and, playing with composure, because he gets riled up way too easily. And, we could probably talk about that later with another player who gets riled up, in the face of adversity. And then with taking the hits, you gotta be thinking of yourself as invaluable to this team and protecting yourself, because that O-line sure as hell isn't doing their job to do it. So.
No, very good points. Cam got to protect himself. Offensive line has to get better. The team as a whole, I think, has looked more talented than the Cardinals. They at least haven't looked like a hot mess like the Cardinals have, but a dire situation for both, starting 1-3, just not a good look for either team. Running out of time here, guys, so let's get through the rest of the news a little quickly here. The Colts struggles continued. The team just looks awful. Wouldn't be shocked if the GM and the coach aren't fired at the end of the year if this continues. Tyler Lockett supposedly playing with a torn PCL. I think a teammate revealed that news. That was interesting. Could explain why he has been pretty much irrelevant in fantasy football so far this year. The Vikings, are they the best team in the NFC? I think they look really good. 4-0. Offense is still kind of, it's not a super explosive offense, but they're maybe one of the most well-rounded teams in the league at this point. They play great defense. They mistake-free offense. The special teams is getting better with Blair Walsh there. I think very good outlook for the Vikings going forward. I'll let you guys comment that in a second. Just two more things. Justin Forsett released by the Ravens. That escalated quickly. And the disaster that is Odell Beckham Jr. Are we being too harsh on him? Maybe. Probably. He is 23 years old. It's easy to forget that sometimes. But does he bring it upon himself? Well, yeah, most of the time. Goes off again on the refs picking on him, says that he's not having fun anymore, which, of course, is leading to speculation that maybe he'll retire, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, whatever. He'll get over it. They're losing right now. That's why he's not having fun anymore. So any comments on the remaining news objects here, fellas?
How boring would it be to see the Broncos and Vikings in the Super Bowl? Would that be the most boring Super Bowl we've ever seen?
I guess it depends on if you like a defensive matchup, right?
Yeah. It'd be hard to watch.
It would
be hard to watch.
There's more time for wings and all the other junk, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, so let's get into our Week 5 advice and help information, I guess you could call it. Who knows? We're going to get into our streaming options. We're going to give you guys 2 players per streaming position, which is the quarterback, the tight end, and the defense. You typically don't stream running backs and wide receivers, but we will give you some info on them in just a bit as well. Quarterbacks, fellas. Top streaming options. Is the top streaming option at quarterback Carson Wentz, bar none? Is he a pick up from waivers and hold on to kind of guy, or is just a good matchup this week?
No, you want to pick them up off waivers and keep them there because this I think it's legit, and I think people might forget about that because they're just coming off of this bye. But he of the rookie quarterbacks, and a lot of them are having success this year, which is you're the rookie quarterback, I guess. He's looked the most poised, and I mean he's done it against a lot of talent. I mean he went in there and he beat up on Pittsburgh, who just then beat up on KC. So people can't forget about that. And he's got the weapons around him. I mean, if they're getting Sproles in there, Wendell Smallwood's coming up. If Ryan Matthews can stay healthy, they got Jordan Matthews there on the outside. Dorial Beckham has been seeing more usage. As of late, he could be worked more into the offense, and then the defense has been playing well. So they're not really asking Wentz to do a lot. They're kind of just asking him, hey, take care of the football, and let's just make smart plays, and the rest will handle itself. And I think for fantasy that really doesn't look that appealing, but I mean he's putting up some decent numbers there, so I would kind of be interested to hang on to him. And then if they start clicking a little bit more, because each game he's going to get more comfortable. Each game is going to be another stepping stone for him to get him acclimated in the NFL. So numbers here towards the end of the season.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's been surprising, really, with the rookie quarterback so far this year. But a guy that I really like this week, and I actually have him as a QB1 in my rankings that will come out tomorrow, is Brian Hoyer. Again, I mean, last year he looked great to the large portions of the season with DeAndre Hopkins, and now this year he's put up back-to-back 300 yards, 2 touchdown performances. So I really like him this week. The Colts defense allows the 8th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. So, like I said, we saw last year that he can have some useful weeks, and I like him. I think he's really a viable QB1 this week for anybody that who's working the waivers this week with Russell Wilson on bye or what have you. So, yeah, I mean, I love Brian Hoyer this week, and if I'm just looking as just a streaming option, he's my number 1 target.
Brian Hoyer as a streaming option. Never thought I'd hear that one. Never thought I'd hear the day. That offense played much better under him, though. And they got a win. So that's huge news there for Hoyer. Good to see him playing well. Take advantage of it now before he has a complete and total meltdown and is no longer useful. A good call out there, guys. Carson Wentz, Brian Hoyer, 2 solid options going into week 5. So let's dive into the tight end position, where I think there's some guys we've talked about here before, but they're still severely under-owned, undervalued, underrated, add another term here. That's what these guys are. How about Cameron Brate in Tampa Bay?
He continues to see volume on a weekly basis. I mean, what else can you say? I mean, I'm surprised people are really shying away from him. I think so. He's seen 18 targets over the past 2 weeks, and I'll take that all week from my tight end. So when you see that Vincent Jackson continues to struggle, and I mean he's kind of looking like I think I've mentioned this before, but he really looks like Roddy White of last year. So to this point, but I think he continues to be he's a borderline tight end 1. Depending on the matchup on a weekly basis. And like I said, he keeps getting those sorts of targets, and you feel fantastic about rolling him out there.
Yeah, Brate's been looking good, and he's getting looks in the red zone especially too. So that's definitely something that you want from your tight end. But I mean, another one of those guys that I'm looking at this week especially is Hunter Henry. I mean, he's kind of really filled in nicely for the Antonio Gates role there. And, I do my DFS article every week, and I'm usually writing in there. I'm writing up the tight end that's facing against Oakland. And, I mean, I think this is a prime spot for him this week to really go off. It should be a high-scoring matchup there. And, he just is looking good. He's getting acclimated, and rookie tight ends usually don't come in and, start, taking on the load that easy, taking to the position. But he's really been looking nice. So I like Hunter Henry going forward too.
Yeah, man. We talked about it on the Sunday show as well. Rookie tight ends usually don't do much, but Hunter Henry gets himself a touchdown this weekend, right? Had a good game. Cameron Brate, I think I'm rolling out this week myself, actually. Got Kobe Fleener on a bye. And part of me wants to drop him. But the other part of me is like, oh, man, what if he has another big game, 20-some points? Let's not drop him, blah, blah, blah. So hard to decide what to do with Kobe Fleener at this point. I think I'm going to hold on to him for now. But Cameron Brate, solid fill-in this week. As Kevin mentioned, he is getting the volume. And that's what you need in tight end for sure. How about defensive plays, guys? Who are some solid plays this week in a defensive position?
Well, I mean, you mentioned the Steelers, and they're playing the Jets. So, I'll fire that up all week. Ryan Fitzpatrick, the turnover machine right now. So, I didn't really want to talk about this. I thought we could get through this entire podcast without bringing up the Steelers-Chiefs game. But, here we are. And but
you knew better than that, Kev. You knew better than that.
My Chiefs got flame roasted this past Sunday night, and I don't know. I want no part of that team right now. They came out pissed off and completely destroyed the Kansas City Chiefs on national television. So with Ryan Fitzpatrick, as we've seen, nine interceptions over the past 2 weeks. As long as that continues, I'll fire up any team that's going against them at this point.
Well, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say thanks a lot, Kev. I went to bed at halftime on Sunday night because the game was so damn boring.
And there's been so much speculation around here about that game. Like people talking about, was because the week before they played the Eagles, and that's the same offense, obviously. So I don't know. That offense though has been completely atrocious so far. Really, outside of one half, that team has been terrible. So I don't know. Hopefully, after the bye week could have came at a better time for the Kansas City Chiefs because they need it.
Yeah, well, they're just not set up in a way to be in shootout games like that. I mean, that's why I think everybody was kind of just amazed at what happened week 1 there with San Diego, because that's really not something that you're going to see out of Alex Smith all the time. But again, he was at home, in a comfortable environment there, and Spencer Ware really, he took that game by storm. But on the road, when you're dealing with Pittsburgh, it just got out of hand too quickly, and there was nothing that they could do late. And then you have the Andy Reid, clock management or lack thereof, where some drives take 8 minutes and you're down by a couple touchdowns. You need to be moving the ball faster than that. So no idea what's going on there. But no, another defense I think that could be really good, that I don't know how many people will be thinking about this, is really the Bears, going against Indianapolis. I mean, Indianapolis over in London, just let Jacksonville kind of, do their thing. And they got a couple sacks against that O-line. They're, getting pressure on Andrew Luck, really playing T.Y. Hilton well, or the Jacksonville was. So I think the Bears are looking at that and thinking that they can, probably, take advantage just like Jacksonville was, because this Jacksonville D, people were writing off last week. And then, they just helped the team to a win. So the Bears could be looking like a prime spot. On Sunday.
Does that scare the hell out of you though? Like, I don't know. Like, I'm just waiting for this Indianapolis offense to blow up, and you feel like I totally get, because I agree that it makes 100% in the world, but at the same time you're like, man, am I really going to test fate and just test this and throw the Bears in my lineup, and then Andrew Luck decides to wake up and the Colts offense wakes up and just puts on a show? So I don't know. I get it, because it makes total sense, because the Colts offense has been awful so far this year. And the Bears look much better than what I expected. Is this game in Indy or is it in Chicago? Because I think that also makes a difference as well. But I think it's in Indy, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it is in Indy. So it could be a bounce back game. We'll see what's going on. I mean, Indianapolis just made some moves to their defensive corps, because they looked awful. So bye Cromartie, he's gone. They just got rid of a linebacker too. So yeah, it could be a nice bounce back spot for them. And obviously, people are, amazed that Chicago's on the board here with a win, so they could come back down to earth easily in this game. But that's what I'm saying. I think it could be a real sneaky option, because again, that the Colts D can't be trusted and their offense can't be trusted. And I think, Brian Hoyer has shown that he can, throw the ball down there. So if it's, if he can, make some plays, and keep the defense off of the field, and the defense just needs to be on there a couple times. We know Luck's capable of turning the ball over, so I think they could kind of make some plays off of that.
If Drew Stanton plays Thursday,
that's what they're hoping.
Sorry, if Drew Stanton plays Thursday, you putting in the 49ers defense, or are you still worried about David Johnson? Kind of lighten him up.
David Johnson. I'm honestly worried about Navarro Bowman being out. Yeah, how they react with that. That's a huge loss for them. So, I think Navarro Bowman being out and then David Johnson on the other side kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, I agree as well with that. I would probably steer clear of that situation. I don't know. I think I don't have nothing. I don't know what I'm going to say. So I'm going to stuff. I have nothing to say.
I got nothing. Nothing to say whatsoever. All right, let's get into the best of the rest. All right, guys, there you go for your defensive streamers of the week. You're looking at the Steelers going up against the New York Jets and Mr. Ryan Fitzmagic, who likes to throw interceptions. 9 in 2 weeks, by the way. And the Bears versus Indianapolis Colts in Indy, a risky pick. But Ryan Williams likes the Bears to continue the upswing. So let's get into the second part here of the Week 5 advice, guys. Let's get into the best of the rest. Some players who are owned in less than 20% of ESPN or Yahoo leagues who are likely not to be picked up in waivers. So these are going to be free agents. They're going to hit free agency. They're going to pass through waivers. No team is interested. Let's get one per. Kev, we'll start with you. Who is your best of the rest option this week for Week 5?
It's got to be, for me, it's probably going to be Ladarius Green. I mean, remember him? I mean, a couple heading into the season, really over the beginning of the training camp and preseason, like Ladarius Green was like, a lot of people had him like as a top 5 option, a top 10 option there in Pittsburgh. And it sounds like from reports that I was seeing today that he is on track to return week 7, which is when he's first allowed to be activated. If that's the case, he could be a really sneaky, add for down the stretch. Of course, he's never been able to stay healthy so far, but if he's able to get back involved in that offense, I mean, none of the tight ends have really done anything for you. Yeah, Jesse James has been okay, but like he's not somebody you're like scared about. And then I think they're missing that in the middle tight end there in that offense. And if he's able to come back, like I think he's a very, very interesting stash who will be back in a few weeks. So if I'm a team that it's not really hurting in any spot, and I have a nice size bench and I can make a move, Ladarius Green's a guy that I would certainly be adding.
Ladarius Green, that's a sneaky one, man. I like it. I didn't realize he was set to come back in week 7, which is right around the corner already, which is just sucks because that means the season is going that much quicker. Great stash option there. Jesse James been very solid for them so far. It'll be interesting if they just throw Green right into the mix, which I imagine they will because he's much more athletic, much more talented at the position than James. But we'll see what happens. How about you, Ryan?
If I had to go with one player right now, I'm probably going Davante Adams. I saw that he's still available. Under 10, I think, in Yahoo, and just over that 10% mark in ESPN. And that we've seen this Packers offense kind of finding their groove, hitting all cylinders going against Detroit when they were heading into their bye. This is a team that loves to run 3 wide receiver sets, and I mean, for whatever reason, and I really don't know what it is, but Rodgers just loves this guy. I mean, he sees the targets. I think he already has like 16 targets on the year or something like that. I mean, and this guy's catch rate is not good, but yet he still like targets this guy. And I mean, they're always running these 3 wide receiver sets. So I think Davante Adams can really be, sneaky good. He's already found pay dirt twice this year. And I really don't think a lot of people are, leaning to him because people might feel like he's touchdown dependent. But I mean, still, when you're playing in an offense that is capable of scoring 30 points a game, this is somebody that needs to be on your radar. He's somebody that you need to be keeping stashed on your bench. And there's a lot of players out there, people are already giving up faith in. So if you have the spot, I think you need to put this guy on your bench because he can fill in for you on some bye weeks coming up.
I know you're new around here, Ryan, and you weren't here last year, but Davante Adams, I don't like him.
he's like the Lord Voldemort of the show. He who shall not be named. That would be.
I feel like that was a mob moment where, like, I'm kind of getting my sense at the table, and Kev pulls me aside, and it's just like, hey, I know you're new here, but this is how we choose things. So,
I'm not telling you can't do this, but
no, I don't know. With all that aside, like Davante Adams, man, like he's just so inefficient, and like he's so frustrating. But you're right, he gets the targets, and I get it because I've been sitting there like in my head, like, man, like he's getting the targets, he's on an explosive offense, but like I don't want to accept it. Like I don't want to, because like and hey, Jeff Janis, he just got the cast off his hand. I don't know. Jeff Janis, I mean, we had that game last year in the playoffs where he exploded, but I don't know. The Packers seem to hate Jeff Janis, and I don't know. Like, but I get it, right? Like, it makes sense, especially in a deeper format, to maybe roster Davante Adams, especially if he continues to get those targets. And actually, Randall Cobb, who has been completely, horrendous so far to start the season. So I get it. It's not a bad option, especially in the deeper formats.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing, Kev. You hit on it right there. It's, as bad as Davante Adams has been, and I get it, he has been bad, he isn't efficient, but I'm saying this guy's still seeing the work, and that makes me, want to consider rostering him. But then again, you have Randall Cobb, who's absolutely doing nothing. I mean, and this was, last year was he's going to take over without Jordy Nelson being back. That didn't happen. This year was he's going to get back to form because Jordy Nelson's back. It's not happening. Devontae Adams is seeing more work than Randall Cobb, and maybe that starts to get on the same playing field at one point. But as of right now, it doesn't look that way. So you take a chance on rostering Devontae Adams, and hope that maybe this is something going forward. Their tight ends are terrible. Lacy is Lacy. He's meh. I don't really like him. Jordy's going to be Jordy. I think he's that next person in the offense that Rodgers is looking to right now.
Devontae Adams. Look, you can't even Kev can't even say his name without shaking his head.
Be right back. I just got to go throw up for a second. I'll be right back.
All right. So Kev will be back in a second. He's going to go a little bit. So he's going to miss my Dontrell Inman pick here, which is good because he might throw up a little bit more with this one. I'm going to go Inman, and it seems a little reactionary. He had one big game. This is more of a personal pick because I like this guy. I hope he can somewhat succeed. Also because who knows what's going to happen with the San Diego offense? 1 week it's Travis Benjamin, the next week it's Tyrell Williams, and then it's Dontrell Inman. So that could make it even more of a risky pick. But for this week and this week alone, he's playing the Oakland Raiders. Another solid matchup. We just saw what he did against the Saints when, for somehow, some way, Travis Benjamin. They played the Saints, right?
Yeah.
All right, just double checking. I didn't want to sound like an idiot before I go on this whole thing. So somehow, some way, Tyrell Williams, Travis Benjamin could not get it done against that atrocious Saints defense, right? So in steps Dontrell Inman. He's like, all right, guys, I'll do it for you. Gets the job done. Catches 7 of 11. Had 120 yards and a touchdown. Awesome game, best game of his career. Will he do it again? Probably not. But he has a great matchup this week. If you're in a deeper league, if you're decimated by injuries, maybe you're decimated by buys this week, I'd be A-okay with you picking up some Dontrell Inman and sticking him in that flex spot just for this week. And then you can cut him because that's it.
Solid. I like it.
I guess that's all you can say. Solid. I'm right there with you. That's all. Okay. Yeah, whatever. If you want. I'm still trying to nurse things. I'm still trying to get past the Tyrell Williams. I had him in so many lineups this weekend. It wasn't funny, and it just crushed my heart. Just crushed me. Like it was the perfect matchup, perfect scenario, and he just laid an egg. I don't even know. I was actually I don't know if you guys do this, but on Twitter, I start searching players' names, like when I'm trying to figure out what's going on. Like, is he hurt? Like, I'm not watching the game, and I did that with Tyrell Williams because nothing was happening, nothing. And I'm like, okay, he must be hurt. Something must have happened. I haven't seen it yet. So I'm on Twitter. I'm searching. Nothing. Nope. And I'm just seeing a bunch of people saying the same thing. Did Tyrell Williams die? Did something happen? So I don't know, but I don't think it's going to continue to happen. I think he's just more of a possession receiver, and I don't know. I would still if I'm putting my eggs in any basket, it's still Tyrell Williams and Travis Benjamin.
Yeah. No, I think what we're seeing, and Anthony kind of touched on it because he said it is a risky pick, but it could have some, reward going on it because I think Rivers is still getting used to these weapons. I think he's still getting used to, not having Allen, Gates, and Woodhead out there. And we've seen, Gordon get more used to it. So it's probably going to be a crapshoot for the time being going forward. But I'm still I have Travis Benjamin in a couple leagues. I have Tyrell Williams in a couple leagues. Gordon, I do want a piece of this offense because I do think that they can put up the points. So I think right now you're just rostering anybody you can in the offense just to see how this is going to play out. And then probably by week 7, 8, we'll know more so who he's favoriting.
And that's a great point there, man, because if you just sit back, take the 100-foot view or whatever, Hunter Henry, brand new. Tyrell Williams, new. Travis Benjamin, new. Inman's been there for a little bit, but he's not really a well-known. in the offense, and he's probably even a healthy scratch last year a couple times. So these are 4 new weapons. The only returning weapon he has is Melvin Gordon at this point. So it's
right.
the wait and see game. Who's he going to pick as his favorite? Maybe he doesn't pick anybody. Maybe it's just a crapshoot every week. Kev, we are 50 minutes in.
Man, we haven't even talked about the main part of what we want to talk about.
This happens every time. We should just start putting the main piece of the podcast at the top because we never get to it. We're like, oh, this is what we really want to talk about. And then 50 minutes in, we have 10 minutes left to talk about it. Hopefully it's been good info so far. I'd say we probably got about 5 minutes of cuts. So we got 15 minutes to talk about this segment. So I'm thinking about just bunching them together and then talking about them that way. Like, hot quarterbacks right now are Matt Ryan and Derek Carr. Which one do you guys think can sustain the level of play? And, which one's more likely a sell high candidate?
That's cool.
Would it be a crazy idea to try to split this up into 2 podcasts? Or is that too crazy?
Split what up? Like do the quarterly review as another podcast?
Yeah, make it like a special. I don't know.
We could do that. This would be
I don't know.
It'd be a 45-minute show. That one would probably be a half hour, but I do have my article to write tomorrow as well, so I don't know.
Let's just do it. Let's just do it normal. Let's do it live. I love that gift.
Well, listen, doing it live. I like that gift actually, but most of our shows have been an hour and 15, so realistically, we got 20 to 30 minutes on this.
All right, let's roll.
All right, are we grouping them? You want to just group them?
Yeah, group it all together.
Okay.
Oh wait, no. Wait, grouping them all together. What do you mean?
The position. When we get into players who have been hot so far.
Well, let's cut out. Okay, so let's cut out Matt Ryan. We've already talked about him, right? We've already talked. Didn't we talk about him in the notes?
We did, yeah. We didn't talk about what to do with him, but we did talk about him.
Oh, damn it!
I think it's not bad to group them up and be like, hey, which one, is more likely to sustain this, and you could talk about multiple ones. It's not like we. I'm sure you like some of these players more than the others in these lists. I know for a fact you don't like DeMarco Murray, so.
Let's roll. Howard, you're the host. However you want to do it, let's do it.
All right. Okay. All right, guys, that'll do it for the best of the rest. Those are some players you should target after waivers is over. Missed out on your waiver options? Hit up the best of the rest. Target those guys. They will help you out in your Week 5 matchups, or maybe beyond, as is the case with Ladarius Green there, Kev. Nice call out. Now we're going to get into the bulk of the episode, our quarterly review. Let's go with the positive ones first, because we like to start off on a positive note. Here's some players who have been super successful so far this year, and how we think they will fare the rest of the year, whether you should sell high, whether they can sustain this level of play, and so on and so forth. From the quarterback position, we talked a little bit about him before in the news, guys. He had a 500-yard game this past weekend. Quarterback 1 by a long shot, Kev. Before the show, you were mentioning like he is way above and beyond the QB2 at this point, and that's Matt Ryan. And then the QB3, a little bit of a shocker here. I am very surprised. I thought he would be good, but not QB3 status 4 weeks in. Derek Carr. Now, you don't necessarily have to compare them. If you have something to say about both, you go for it. But which one of these guys do you think, can really sustain the level of play? Is either of them a sell high candidate? Should people be looking to move them or just hold on for the ride and enjoy it straight to the playoffs?
Actually, back up. Say, because Derek Carr is QB6. I don't know. Did you write that down or did I?
I did. You got him on Fantasy Pros. I don't know what you're using.
Pro Football Focus has him at QB6 at 78 fantasy points.
Hold on. Let me look. I don't even remember what I said there.
Because they have Matt Ryan 1 and Drew Brees 2, Big Ben 3, Cam Newton. Was that and then Cam Newton 4, Andrew Luck 5 with 79, and then
see he's 4 on Yahoo. Jesus Christ, why are they all different?
I'm wondering if what's the settings? Is it a 6-point touchdown? That could be why.
Yeah.
Who plays 4-point touchdowns?
I think that's kind of the standard, actually.
Ugh. That's stupid. Okay.
So yeah, just go back and say the same thing, but just say he's the QB6.
All right, what the hell did I say?
QB3?
No, I know, but I don't remember what I said about him.
Well, I don't know. Just start over, and then I guess say he's QB6.
All right. And then we have a bit of a surprise here with the QB6. I expected him to be good, but maybe not this good. And that's Derek Carr of the Oakland Raiders, riding high in the QB6 status at this point. So between these two guys, it's just two guys for now. There's other guys who are doing really well, but I thought these two were kind of the most surprising. Which one of them is most likely to sustain the level of play? Are either of them sell-high candidates? Would you try to get rid of them at this point or just kind of go with them and ride your way into the playoffs?
I mean, I think one, it ultimately depends on what your roster construction is. So if like you had already had another quarterback, and let's say you picked up, because both these guys could have been had through waivers to start the season, and if that's the case, depends on who the other option is. Or maybe you sell the other option. Here's the thing, though, to kind of like you mentioned earlier, it's like zoom out on these situations. We both have to remember. We have to remember that Matt Ryan. If you look at the schedule that Matt Ryan and Derek Carr have both had, they've been pretty easy cupcakes. I mean, Derek Carr through 4 weeks. I mean, yes, they played the Titans, and that was probably the best defense that they faced, because other than that, they played Saints, Falcons, and Ravens, who I guess you could make an argument for the Ravens, but even still, the Ravens hadn't really been tested either, on the offensive side of the ball, or their defense hadn't been tested, excuse me. So I don't know. Like, I think this is I would run and try to sell Derek Carr if you can get a nice haul for him, because I don't think he continues this level of play. I think he's a solid quarterback, and I wouldn't be surprised if he finished as a QB1, but I don't think he's going to finish this high. And, like I mentioned, that some of it's a little fool's gold because of the schedule that they've been handed through the first 4 weeks of the season.
Yeah, Kev, you knocked it right out of the water. I mean, that's kind of the logic that I'm using with Matt Ryan here, because I picked up Matt Ryan off of waivers, I think after week 1 in a league where I had Tyrod Taylor, and I've been using him, and it's been great, but I really don't like Matt Ryan. I've just been trying to ride the train as long as I can, and now I'm trying to move him, because you look at his schedule. His upcoming schedule is at Denver, at Seattle. He gets a nice little matchup there at home against San Diego. Then it's at home Green Bay, at Tampa Bay, and then it's at Philly, Arizona at home, KC at home, at LA. I mean, those are his next couple matchups. Those scare me. Those really scare me. And when we're talking about this, we talked about at the beginning, Julio's is really only option. This running game, they're in a committee, no idea how they're going to be using them. And then it's Jacob Tammy pretty much after that. So I think this is a great time to sell on Matt Ryan. I don't think that this is sustainable. I kind of like Derek Carr. I would want to keep him. He's got nice weapons around there, and there's a running game there where they're pretty much saying, Derek Carr, you're the guy. We're going to trust you to throw the ball and make the decisions. This Matt Ryan thing where he only has really one option to go to, with Sanu kind of battling, staying healthy. That's one where I would want to move him, because you could get a lot for him. You could get a ransom of Matt Ryan right now.
I was happy to pick up Matt Ryan off the waiver wire after week 2. Solid decision for me. 2 years in a row, by the way. Last year I picked up Carson Palmer off the waiver wire after 3 weeks. So I'm 2 for 2 with these waiver wire pickups with these quarterbacks. Likely going to ride it out. Unfortunately for me, I'm in a league that doesn't really trade very often. They all know I do this podcast, so that doesn't help me, because every once in a while they'll listen, so they know exactly what I'm trying to do, and they also think I'm trying to screw them over every single time I send them an offer. But for you guys out there, you normal players who aren't considered fantasy experts, I hate that term, fantasy experts, but your normal fantasy football players, I think trading Matt Ryan is a rock-solid option. Derek Carr, if you can trade him, I don't know many people that would trade for him at this point, but maybe you got an Oakland Raiders fan in your league who really wants him. Just fleece him for it. Absolutely.
I don't know. Now here I am second-guessing myself, because now I'm looking at their schedule, especially their week 14, 15, and 16 schedule, which is what I try to make a habit of doing if I'm ever making a trade. and they get at Kansas City, which is going to be a tough matchup. But then week 15 they get the Chargers, and then week 16 they get the Colts. So I mean, they saved the Broncos for week 17. So unless you play 17 weeks, you're gonna, obviously you want nothing to do with that at Denver week 17. But other than that, it's not really a bad schedule. I mean, because they got the Chargers, Chiefs, at Jags, at Bucks, Broncos, Texans, Panthers, Bills, and then like I said, Chiefs, Chargers, and Colts to end the year. So I don't know. Maybe you do hold on to him. I think at the end of the day, it just really is going to depend on what you could get back for him and what your other option is at quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Let's get into the running backs, guys. So a surprising list here to me. It's pretty unbelievable, actually. Let's take a moment, because in the preseason, I don't think any of these four, sans maybe Melvin Gordon, were really high on any of our lists, except maybe Ryan, because Ryan, you joined us a little later towards the start of the regular season. But we have Isaiah Crowell, DeMarco Murray, Melvin Gordon, Carlos Hyde. You guys want me to repeat that? Did anybody pass out? Kev, are you awake?
God.
So Crowell, DeMarco, Melvin Gordon, Carlos Hyde are four of the top fantasy running backs 4 weeks into the season. Unbelievable. Gordon's yard per carry hasn't been great, but he's getting touchdowns. So as fantasy players, do we really care? Probably not, as long as he's getting the touchdowns. DeMarco Murray has been virtually unstoppable down there in Tennessee. He's the only player that's been unstoppable on that offense. Isaiah Crowell, 6.5 yards per carry, unbelievable. And then Carlos Hyde also with 5 touchdowns, touchdown machines here. Which one of these guys is your favorite?
Oh, have to pick one?
I mean, you could pick multiple.
No. I mean, Melvin Gordon, I think, is my favorite by far. Just considering, I mean, he's the only, real running back that they have. I think he's in a good spot going forward. I mean, they've really done a great job to get him acclimated. I mean, coming off the year where he had no touchdowns, and now he already has, I believe, 3 on the year. So he's really kind of getting himself 4. He's kind of getting himself acclimated into the offense. So he's really one that I like. Carlos Hyde, I guess, would be the second one on that list. I don't know. The other 3, I don't really like that much at all.
DeMarco's my boy. What about you, Kev?
Well, DeMarco has 5 touchdowns on the year. He has 3 on the ground, 2 through the air. And I think that's one thing, that area that's really intriguing with him, is that his usage in the passing game as well. He has a 100% catch rate right now. And he's hauled in 19 of 19 targets for 156 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, I mean, as long as he continues to get this level of work in Tennessee, which it appears he's going to, that DeMarco Murray makes for a fine option. These other guys, though, is when you start to get a little bit more nervous. Like Melvin Gordon, for example, I mean, yeah, he has the touchdowns and leads the league in touchdowns right now at 6, but he's been pretty ineffective. I mean, on 73 carries, he only has 230 yards, and he has a 3.2 yard per carry average, which is something that I don't like to harp on a ton, but it's still worth mentioning that if it wasn't for the volume that he's getting – if it wasn't for the touchdowns that he's getting, it makes you a little bit more nervous, but there's nobody else there to really even threaten him whatsoever. I still love Melvin Gordon. I'm really happy to see him actually performing. He's the number 2 overall fantasy running back right now. So with that being said, though, Isaiah Crowell might be the most shocking one of them all. He was a guy of the offseason that we really liked, and we sort of talked about, but nobody saw this. I mean, 394 yards. He's close to leading the league in rushing. 3 touchdowns. He has a 6.5 yard per carry average, which is most in the league. He has 4.5 yards after contact, is most in the league. I just didn't see this sort of production coming, and I'm sorry, but I'm selling as quickly as possible as I can on Isaiah Crowell, because I just don't think this is going to be sustainable. I think, as well as Hugh Jackson has done, because he's kept the team competitive. I don't think anybody saw that this team being this competitive with so far, and I think it's going to catch up with them. Defenses are going to start figuring it out, and I think they're going to start being a little bit more limited. And once that does, I think Isaiah Crowell's production could go down. So this might be as high as his production will be all year. And then I know he's not really on this list, but this is a guy that I feel like we should talk about, and that's LeGarrette Blount. I feel like that he is an excellent sell high He didn't have the best week last week, so that hurts a little bit. But with Tom Brady returning, this is going to be an issue because they are going to stop running the ball nearly as much as they've had. Because last year, so through the first 4 weeks last year, they only had 56 total carries. This year, they have over 100. And so through the first 4 weeks with and without Tom Brady, and throughout the entire year last year, they had a 65 to 35 split run or pass first run, which was, I think, third highest in the league. So LeGarrette Blount's usage is going to drop substantially. If you own LeGarrette Blount, this is your last week to really try to sell high and hope people aren't that savvy and that you can kind of pull a fast one on somebody, because I am trying to trade LeGarrette Blount as quickly as possible because I think you're going to see the entire offense really elevate. I think Julian Edelman, who has not really been useful, which I think I saw today over his last 16 games played with Tom Brady, I think he's put up like 1,300 yards and 10 touchdowns. So I'm back on Julian Edelman. Julian Edelman's now a solid wide receiver 2 in PPR formats. And then I think Chris Hogan becomes very interesting with Tom Brady returning. So I don't know. I just wanted to get that out there about LeGarrette Blount. I'm trying to trade him as soon as possible.
Good advice there. Try to get rid of Blount with Brady coming back. It's stats, guys. Stats, ladies and gentlemen. They do not run the ball as much with Brady behind the helm. To go back to Melvin Gordon for a second, he does have 13 of 17 targets for 104 yards through the air, too, so that's a nice little nugget there with Danny Woodhead out. Especially, he's going to be much more involved in that passing game. Solid option. How about the wide receivers, guys? I mean, you want to talk about a surprising list. There's really only one guy on this list that I expected to be here because I wasn't very high on Marvin Jones. Shocker, he's on the list, guys. Michael Crabtree. We have 3 touchdowns this weekend on most people's benches. Hello. Emmanuel Sanders and Will Fuller. I mean, I laughed at Houston for taking Will Fuller as early as they did in this draft. The dude's more productive than freaking DeAndre Hopkins at this point. So 4 of the most productive wide receivers in football. Emmanuel Sanders this is a bit of a shock, especially with Trevor Siemian at the helm. We expected him to just be nothing, right? Outperforming Demaryius Thomas at this point. Michael Crabtree outperforming Amari Cooper. And Marvin Jones is pretty much the go-to guy in Detroit. Golden Tate is an afterthought. Anquan Bolden's more productive than Golden Tate. Eric Ebron's been okay. So out of these 4 options, and maybe you got another one you want to throw in like Kev just did with the running backs, who's been most impressive to you?
Well, first off, you mentioned Golden Tate. Is he a drop candidate? Can we just go ahead and drop him?
Yes.
He's not a drop candidate. No, you don't drop him.
He is very, 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 very borderline close to being a drop candidate. It's been borderline. I get it.
You can't drop him yet.
Why not?
I get where you're coming from, but like he was benched in that game, and then they came out afterwards and kind of gave this like lame answer of what was going on, that they wanted to get Andre Roberts involved like they've been doing in previous weeks, which they hadn't done in previous weeks. So I don't know where that came from, but I don't know, like Golden Tate. But for me, I think it has to be Marvin Jones. Like I really liked Marvin Jones heading into the season. I told people, draft Marvin Jones, not Golden Tate. It made far more sense to draft Marvin Jones, who you could get 3 or 4 rounds later, who profiled as much more of a red zone target and everything else. And so with Marvin Jones, he's a top 5 wide receiver right now, and he continues to see a ton of targets. I am holding Marvin Jones because I don't think that's going to change. The Lions defense has been awful so far, so they're going to continue to have to throw at a very elevated rate. And so for me, Marvin Jones, I am all aboard that train, and you are not getting rid of him because unless someone just blows you away, I'm holding Marvin Jones.
Yeah. No, you definitely hold on to Marvin Jones. I wouldn't drop Tate yet just because of where people drafted him. I just wouldn't be able to pull the trigger on that right now, but he's definitely, he's benchable until further notice. He got benched by the Lions. He's definitely capable of being benched for your fantasy team. You need to go out there, search the waivers, and find a better option because he needs to be benched. I think the thing, really, I was on Marvin Jones too. I love Marvin Jones, especially where you could draft him. Crabtree really is, it's surprising me, but it really shouldn't when you look at since, Amari Cooper has been there, Derek Carr's really been looking Crabtree's way more than he has Amari Cooper. And I mean, Amari Cooper has talent, but Crabtree, I was thinking about this. I mean, he might be the best number 2 wide receiver in the league. I mean, outside of like Emmanuel Sanders, but I'm almost willing to say that Emmanuel Sanders is the number 1. I mean, because he's getting the targets. He's getting the targets this year. He outscored Demaryius Thomas in 8 weeks last year. He was higher scoring than Demaryius Thomas. And Demaryius Thomas hasn't had a 20-point fantasy game since 2014. And Emmanuel Sanders has 2 of those. One of them just came this year. So we've seen it with when Oslar was there and, Manning, his time out. And now with, Paxton Lynch loves him. Simeon loves him. Emmanuel Sanders just garners these targets. And what we really liked about Demaryius Thomas was his, ability to, catch those touchdowns and be a threat in the red zone. And it's not looking that way right now. So I think Emmanuel Sanders and Michael Crabtree, those guys are really, surprising me right now. But when you look at the stats, it's kind of telling themselves.
See, here's the thing with Amari Cooper that I think is interesting because I've gotten some, I've seen some movement on him this week where people are a little worried about him. But I think he's just been unlucky. Like, he's seen only 2 less targets than what Michael Crabtree has. He's 20 for 33. Crabtree's 26 for 35. Amari Cooper has more yards, barely 319 to 308 of Michael Crabtree. Where they're separated is at touchdowns. Michael Crabtree has 4 and Amari Cooper has 0. But he does have 2 touchdowns that he should have had. One was a 65-yard touchdown that was called back, and then the other one was a play where Amari Cooper was wide open, should have been an easy touchdown. Derek Carr missed him. And so, I think he's been a little unlucky. Yeah, I like Michael Crabtree, but there's no way he's sustaining this level of success. I don't see it. I still think he's a fine, low-end wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 option on most weeks. But they have to. I still do not get where Seth Roberts has more red zone targets than Amari Cooper. What are the Raiders seeing that we're not? Like, Amari Cooper is an elite level talent. We talk about how his route running is such a nuanced route runner and everything else. Like, what is going on when it gets into the red zone? We're like, meh, yeah, no, we're not gonna mess with you, Amari Cooper. We're good. Like, I don't get it. But maybe if that changes, because Amari Cooper is the better talent of the 2 and should be targeted far more than should see far more of the red zone opportunities. And hopefully, it looked like maybe something was going on with Clive Walford. I know at the end of the game he got hurt. So if something like that happens, that could really hurt. That could really help Amari Cooper see more red zone targets. But who knows? Maybe they'll just funnel it more to Seth Roberts or Andre Holmes. But whatever. With the Emmanuel Sanders and Demaryius Thomas thing, I think it's interesting because Demaryius Thomas has been more efficient with his targets than what Emmanuel Sanders has. Emmanuel Sanders has received more for sure, but Demaryius Thomas is right behind him and only really is down, I believe, only behind him by 1 touchdown. So, here's the thing. It's going to be interesting to see what happens is if Paxton Lynch, because the Broncos kind of took that seal off of Paxton Lynch, right? Can you really put him back into the, away after they've kind of, brought him out? And they said that Trevor Siemian could have came back in last week. Well, why didn't they put him back in? Because now you kind of have an issue with Paxton Lynch looked really damn good. Yes, limited opportunities, but I was pretty damn impressed. Has a much bigger arm, more mobile, and is able to, and so I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how that changes. But like I said, with Demaryius Thomas, it's not like Demaryius Thomas has been a bum. He's wide receiver 12 or 13, I believe, and he's right behind Emmanuel Sanders. Like I said, he has more receiving yards than Emmanuel Sanders does. He just trails him by 1 touchdown.
Way to steal my thunder, man. I was just about to make that point as a Demaryius Thomas supporter. And then here Kev goes, oh, yeah, Thomas has been more efficient. Big jerk. Just time out from the podcast for a second. I doubt you guys are watching this baseball game, but Orioles guy going back to make the catch back at the track near the line, and a Toronto Blue Jays fan throws a water bottle at him and is an inch from hitting him in the head as he's trying to make the catch. Like, what does baseball do in that situation if he would actually hit him?
I know that you don't follow baseball, but that sounds exactly like something the Toronto Blue Jays would do. Like, their fans are some of the worst. I remember watching last year against the Royals when they played them, and like they are just a bunch of sore losers. And like I don't know, so that does not surprise me one bit that you say that.
Like, what does baseball do? Like, they count it as an out? Like, I don't get it.
I won't.
That's too close.
Yeah,
That's too close to home from being a Cubs fan. I don't like to see any fan interference, anything when playoffs come around. So
that's some. I mean, that's a bull.
Steve Bartman.
The center fielder came in and was just screaming at him, and I was like, "Whoo, he's gonna just kill this fan." The fan's talking back. There's no security anywhere to be found. Of course
not.
I think if they would have been, if he wouldn't have caught the ball and it would have actually hit him, I think it would have been an out because it was home fan interference. I think it would have been similar to if a guy was going to catch the ball at the warning track for a wild home run and the fan interferes, it counts as an out. So I would assume that's the way it would work. I don't know how they would play that.
I would hope so. All right, back to the pod. One thing I just wanted to say about the Will Fuller, DeAndre Hopkins situation, neither of these receivers has been very efficient. I mean, maybe the throws haven't been great because Osweiler has not looked terrific in my eyes, at least. But 34 targets for Fuller, 33 for Hopkins. They've only caught 19 and 17 respectively. They get a lot of yards, though, off of these. I mean, 19 for 323 for Fuller and 17 for 227 for Hopkins. Fuller also has the added bonus of having a return touchdown if your league scores those as well, which it should. It's still a touchdown. So, a little disappointing in Hopkins, but we'll probably get to that in the next segment here. But Will Fuller, has he been as impressive as the fantasy points would suggest at this point?
I think he's been impressive. You agree, Kev, or no?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I've been, I remember when we did our draft show that there were some of you that were against him when we did that show back in what was it, April? Yeah.
Yep.
And whenever they made that call, and I actually thought it was a great call because I think that's exactly what they needed. They needed that field stretcher to go with DeAndre Hopkins. I'm just surprised at the level that he's already been productive because I don't know if I saw this. Because, I mean, I know there's the Sterling Shepard truthers out there that will probably light me on fire, but you have to make a strong argument that Will Fuller has been the best rookie wide receiver so far, through 4 weeks of the season. He's completely outplayed everybody's expectations and wasn't anywhere on anybody's radar entering the season at all. I mean, it's not like he was a guy that was talked about a lot to be a real fantasy contributor, but right now, I mean, he's a viable wide receiver 2 or 3 right now. The problem is like you mentioned, his inefficiency because he is a deep threat. You're going to see, he's not going to be a guy who has, 80, 90% catch rate because, I mean, he's going to be more of the field stretcher and things of that nature. I'm just surprised that he's seen far more than DeAndre Hopkins. And, I mean, obviously things don't get any better for DeAndre Hopkins or the Texans because now they get to face the Vikings, which we all know is just avoid all Texans this week. But I don't know. I've been very, very impressed with Will Fuller and the level of production that we've seen so far through a quarter of the season.
Well, yeah, and I think Will Fuller's. I was gonna say I think DeAndre's still getting more targets. I think DeAndre has one more target than Will Fuller has. I think it's 34 to 33 right now. And they both have those 2 touchdowns. And obviously, Will Fuller's punt return last week definitely inflating his numbers there. But I think, it's so interesting to me is Bill O'Brien said that he was taking over these play calls for the Texans last week. And we saw more usage go Will Fuller's way. And I mean, this was against Tennessee defense who, people were talking about Osweiler should just eat them up. I really don't even know if Osweiler is being that efficient, to be honest, because McCourty and Parrish Cox, those guys should be torched. I mean, with these weapons, those guys should have blown up. Both of them should have had big games. And DeAndre Hopkins didn't have his first catch until the 4th quarter. Like, he just wasn't able to, find them. So I think, that definitely has to be addressed going forward because this is an offense right now where you got Lamar Miller, he's seeing the touches, he's coming along. Will Fuller, he's been outstanding. And you got to let DeAndre Hopkins, you got to give him chances to eat. And whether that's, finding him different ways to get open, moving him around, whatever, because this guy's a talent, and he should not, he should not be taking a back seat on his own team. I don't care how good Will Fuller is, but you need to find a way to get this guy work. And then, Will Fuller's work will just be that much easier because they'll have to, accommodate for DeAndre Hopkins.
And not to keep harping on the subject, because I think we do have to get to the tight ends in a second, but did you see how disappointed DeAndre Hopkins' family was? He had one catch for 4 yards, and his family was there in like the front row, and they show his mom, and she had the most ticked off look on her face that you had ever seen. And the Texans are winning, by the way, but she didn't care. She's there to see her son. He got one catch at the end of the game when they were burning out the clock. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. How about the tight ends, guys? Kyle Rudolph, a tight end 2 right now. Jeez, is he finally woken up, or is this, just kind of a mirage here? And then Jimmy Graham exploding onto the scene the past 2 weeks. 12 receptions, 213 yards, and a touchdown. Which of these, I don't want to call them underperformers because they've been okay. Jimmy Graham was fantastic in New Orleans, but very much underperformed last year in Seattle. But which one of these is most likely to keep it going here in this 2016 season?
I could see both of them continuing, some level of high success, because Kyle Rudolph, so far he's averaging 7.5 targets per week, 55 yards, and 0.75 touchdowns a week, which is. But see, when you go back and you remember when Norv Turner arrived in Minnesota, that's kind of how we felt about Kyle Rudolph, because, Norv Turner has always been, amazing for tight ends and their fantasy production. And so, that's sort of what we thought we would get from Kyle Rudolph moving forward, and we hadn't got it until this year. And so I think it's going to be interesting, but he's certainly a guy that you should be holding on to, especially in the nasty world that the tight end position has become. And so I think it's sustainable for him. Of course, I don't think he's going to be the tight end 2. I think Jordan Reed and, obviously with Gronk coming back is going to sort of, hinder that. But I certainly think he can be a viable tight end 1 throughout the rest of the season. And then as for Jimmy Graham, nobody could have foreseen this level of just involvement in the offense this soon. So he's another guy that I'm really liking, and I think you got to fire him up. Doug Baldwin's been the only contributor in the passing game. Tyler Lockett, we've already mentioned with the injury, and if he doesn't get healthy, there's Jermaine Kearse, and then I think Jimmy Graham is really could carve out himself a really nice role in the offense.
Yeah, if I'm picking one, I'm probably going Jimmy Graham, which is almost a little bit shocking for me to say. But I like Kyle Rudolph, and I just think that the Vikings offense will come. There will come times when the defense is definitely going to have to carry them because Sam Bradford is the quarterback. And, it's definitely no mistake that Rudolph is getting the targets when they get into the red zone. That's a guy who he's looking for. But outside of that red zone, they're trying to establish the run. They're trying to get Stephon Diggs involved. So, you could see weeks where it's just touchdown dependent for Kyle Rudolph, whereas Jimmy Graham, these past 2 weeks, he's been getting looks everywhere across the field. And, we expected, or not, shouldn't say we, but I was on the Tyler Lockett bandwagon. I expected him to be involved, and it seems like Jimmy Graham just snatched that away from him. And whether Lockett's injured or not, I think that this is a real thing that we have to look at. And he's somebody who, is probably going to get, 6-7 targets a game. And, he can definitely get you, enough points through yardage. And then if he's getting in the end zone, in the red zone, that's pretty much where you want to lean. He could end up in that top tier of tight ends. So Jimmy Graham definitely is where I would lean. I feel more comfortable with it.
Absolutely. I'm overall just kind of happy to see Jimmy Graham get back into the swing of things, get back into the flow, start dominating again. This guy was an unbelievable force at the tight end position to the point where he wanted to be paid as a wide receiver when he was talking contract negotiation with the Saints. You guys remember that? That was a huge story. Good to see him back on top. Not on top yet, but he's looking like he's on his way there. So good to see that there. Good for Jimmy Graham. I like both of them. to be honest with you. They're both solid options going forward. Kyle Rudolph, I think, is a free agent in a lot of leagues still, too. So go ahead and try to grab him if you can. Jimmy Graham, too, for that matter. Just saw something on Twitter before somebody's asked if they have Dennis Pitta asked if they should pick up Jimmy Graham. Duh. Okay. So how about let's get into some guys who have been playing pretty darn poorly so far this season, but some of them look like they could have the potential to bounce back. Other ones, maybe not so much. From the quarterback perspective, guys, we got Eli Manning. We're expecting big things out of him after the offense really finished last season hot. They looked great. Odell Beckham was having a fantastic time. And even in the beginning of this year, Victor Cruz comes back. He has a great game. Sterling Shepard is on the offense. He's having a good day. And yet Eli Manning is struggling. And then we go back to the Arizona Cardinals. We're talking some Carson Palmer. He's the QB 20 right now. The whole offense seems to be struggling at that point. Michael Floyd is living off of a 3-catch, 1-touchdown performance week after week, just keeping fantasy owners barely alive there with his minimal production. So do we expect either of these guys to bounce back at this point?
Yeah, of course. I think Eli Manning is probably – I think it actually starts this weekend against the Packers. The Packers have been elite, and I can't stress that enough, elite against the running game so far this year. But where they've been hurt is in the passing game, and they sort of funnel everything through that. And so I think I think when you look at their schedule, especially for the Giants, that it kind of, I mean, it hasn't been terrible, but I mean, so moving forward, they have the Packers, Ravens, Rams, and then so I think through those next 3 weeks, I think they can really sort of get things turned around there against each of those defenses, because I don't think you're really, in terms of the passing game, you're not really nervous about any of those teams. So I think he gets it going. His numbers aren't really terrible. He just hasn't had any touchdowns. I mean, he has 4 touchdowns so far on the year, which obviously, as we know, has hurt the entire offense. And then, I mean, his yardage is all still there. I mean, 1,100 yards, but only 4 touchdowns, and of course the 4 interceptions. But I mean, it's Eli Manning. When you draft him, and you're pretty much drafting him going into it knowing that that's what you're going to get. But I don't know. I think they'll be okay. I think they'll figure it out. And I think Eli Manning is a guy, especially if somebody were to drop, that I would be right there to scoop him right up.
Yeah. Eli's definitely in a good bounce back. I mean, he's looked rough on Monday Night Football, and that's going to be in a lot of people's heads this week. But like you said, he could be in a great spot to bounce back. He's definitely got the receiving weapons around him, and I mean, my goodness, they got Bobby Rainey back there acclimated, as a running back out of the passing game, which is just the new trend. If you don't have a running back that can catch the ball, like you're behind in the NFL right now. So even with Orleans Darkwa as the starter, they're probably going to be looking to just utilize their backs as passing options for Eli. We've seen Sterling Shepard be able to do it. Victor Cruz has been looking good coming back, and Odell Beckham is definitely going to break out of the slump. So definitely, just be patient on Eli. It'll come around.
It's amazing that either of these guys are so low on the totem pole right now. Both of them have just an enormous number of weapons, whether you're, Eli doesn't have the luxury of having a David Johnson in the backfield, but we mentioned his receivers are just ridiculous. And then even the receivers on the Arizona side are equally as good with Larry Fitzgerald, just seamingly never ages. You got Michael Floyd, who is supposed to be the second coming, right? He's supposed to be the wide receiver 1. We're still waiting for that to happen. And then John Brown getting back from the concussion, looking like he never left. And then you still have some other young guys there who are doing well. I agree with the Eli Manning sentiment there. I got to say, am I the only one that likes Bobby Rainey? Like, I loved this dude down in Tampa Bay. I thought he was fantastic. They got rid of him, I guess, because they had an embarrassment of riches there with Doug Martin and Charles Sims. I thought the Bobby Rainey signing was fantastic for the Giants, and he showed up in his first game.
Yeah, I think
he looked great there.
But also, Paul Perkins had that 67-yard run that he broke off against them. I mean, that was nice, but I don't know. I'm not excited about really either of them, but I think if you had to choose one, I think you're choosing Bobby Rainey just because I think he's going to get the workload, unless Paul Perkins continues that sort of unreal level production where he just busts off huge receptions every game. But
it was crazy to see them even be able to run against Minnesota, which is nuts because, I mean, the Giants' running game, 32nd in the league last year, hasn't been much better this year. Nuts that they were able to do that. Speaking of the running game, guys, we've got some big names here on the running back list. Lamar Miller, I was really high on this guy. Really thought he was going to be able to produce in Houston. So far, he hasn't been that productive. He's been getting the workload. I mean, 22 plus carries a game, something like that. Just crazy. Todd Gurley was a top 5 pick, often a top 3 pick. Is currently the RB23 and has 2.6 yards per carry. That's just rough. And then Mark Ingram not getting the usage we saw last year. Travaris Cadet actually cutting in to his production quite significantly, which is just very aggravating for Mark Ingram owners. Can you tell him one of them? What do we do with these guys?
Well, yeah, not only Travaris Cadet, but frickin' John Kuhn as well, too. I mean,
Kuhn!
Unbelievable. It's frickin' 3 touchdowns that this guy just vultured from you last week.
Do that Kuhn cheer, though. I haven't heard the Saints do it at all. It must be a Packer thing, right?
Exactly. No, Mark Ingram, I think Mark Ingram is fine. Lamar Miller, definitely, I mean, he's getting the carries, so it'll come around eventually. I think you just be patient on him. Todd Gurley's the one where you definitely got to be concerned because it's the division that he faces. I mean, he's going against the Rams, go against the Rams twice, Cardinals twice, Seattle twice. I mean, those are tough matchups, and he performed okay last year as a rookie, and people were like, oh, don't worry about it. But now these guys have film on him, and I think it's something to worry about because right now he hasn't looked good against divisional matchups, and then he played Tampa Bay, and then he put up 20 points, which is not a really scary defense. But they're going to be facing the Jets this year. Other tough running game matchups as well. They got Carolina coming in. They're going to play New England. I mean, he's going against Buffalo this week, so he's definitely somebody that I'm kind of worried about. I have him in one league, I believe, and because I just didn't want to draft him that high, and I'm a little worried about that in that league. Yeah,
I mean, you have to be nervous about Todd Gurley right now and the production that you're getting from him because it's really non-existent. But I don't know. It's tough because, like you mentioned, that they just haven't had the passing attack so far this year. So teams are just stacking the box. I think I saw somewhere today that he's had, of all running backs, he's faced the most 8-man boxes so far this season. So I don't know. It's certainly something to be concerned with because right now he's not even he's barely an RB2. So that's certainly something to be concerned with. But I don't know. You can't really do anything with him. Maybe you can get somebody to trade you for him, but you're probably not going to get the right return on investment. And so I don't know. I think you just have to hold on and hope that they get this figured out with him. Lamar Miller, though, I don't know. I'm very nervous about Lamar Miller. He's kind of the guy, the preseason darling of the season that we all were excited about. Finally, he gets to go to Houston. He gets the restraints taken off of him. The Dolphins, he's finally out of Miami, and he just hasn't really looked good. Like every game I've seen him in, like I've not been like, oh man, Lamar Miller, damn, that was impressive. Like it's just kind of like, he's there. Like, okay, cool. Like, is that Alfred Blue or is that Lamar Miller? I don't know. Like, I don't know. I just haven't been excited about Lamar Miller. I mean, so he's getting the volume, great. But if he's not doing a whole lot with it, what do you do with that? So I don't know. Like, I think he's still valuable enough to where you could get something from him, and I would probably be looking to trade him as soon as possible. So I think it goes back to kind of what we talked about during the offseason, especially in the beginning, whenever the Dolphins let him go, is there a reason why the Dolphins let him go, that they didn't even franchise tag him when they could have? Like, did they know something that we didn't know, that maybe he's just – because, I mean, he went through multiple coaches, and not a one of them felt really great about him, and they didn't even feel great as a franchise to keep him. And like I said, I know it's way too early to, like, overreact. It's only 4 weeks of the season. I think he will still be okay, but – I just don't think he's as good as what we thought he was going to be, and I think you should prepare yourself for that because I don't think he's going to be a top 5 running back. I I just don't think he has it in him. I think he's better. I think he'd be actually better suited if they actually limited his touches versus actually giving him such a large workload. Because we saw last year, like we kind of went through this, me and Anthony did over the offseason, where we looked at his game usage, and every time he had an upswing and touches, he fell off the next few weeks. And then they lowered it down, and he came back up. So for me, I would try to move Lamar Miller.
Yeah, I think the 15 to 18 carry range is a good range for him. That's where I think, if I remember correctly, where he kind of performed the best. Anything over 20, and like you said, he fell off. Yards per carry fell off. Production for the next couple of weeks fell off. So I don't know that he can handle that load, but they have nobody else there. I mean, with all the good running backs, the rookie running backs this year, they couldn't draft a single one to help back up Lamar Miller. I mean, that's a little surprising to me, but really hopeful on the Todd Gurley front. I know earlier this year I was lamenting over whether or not to take David Johnson or Todd Gurley first overall. I did take Johnson, feeling pretty good about it so far. I still think he's the focal point of that offense, though, and he has a good year. Lamar Miller, I'm hoping, has a good year. That's just more of a personal thing because, a Dolphins fan, I would love to see him succeed. And Mark Ingram, also very high on. Would love to see him kind of bounce back, get more involved in that passing game. All right, guys, lastly here is the wide receivers. We have a pair of wide receivers here that we talked a little bit about already. So, we kind of got some thoughts out on them already, and that's Odell Beckham Jr. and Randall Cobb. Anything additional to add to the situation here? Do we expect bounce-back years? I know, Ryan, you mentioned with Randall Cobb that you kind of like Devontae Adams because Cobb is still struggling. We thought that he would return to form with the return of Nelson. It hasn't happened yet. And Odell Beckham Jr., Kev, you had some interesting statistics before the show. Maybe you want to get into those now about his performance this year compared to his performance last year through 4 weeks.
Yeah, I think everyone's kind of the fall. What is it? The Chicken Little. The sky is falling with him right now, and I just don't think it's really warranted because if you go back and look, like it's easy to remember what's going on now and not really. So if you go back to 2015, so this was his usage or his numbers through 2015 and 2016 through 4 weeks. Through 2015, 24 of 40 targets for 307 yards and 2 touchdowns for a 60% catch rate. 2016, 20 of 37 for 303 yards and 0 touchdowns for a 59% catch rate. His numbers literally are pretty much exact except for the 2 touchdowns. I think people are overblowing Odell Beckham Jr. and his production so far this year, trying to come up with narratives of people are getting in his head, and he's just not. No, like he's literally has the same numbers as last year outside of the 2 touchdowns, which we can all agree are pretty fluky to predict. And then the funny part about it is you went back to last year and you look through the first 4 weeks, then you go to week 5, is when he blew up and he had over 120 yards and I think a touchdown or 2. And so I'm not worried about Odell Beckham Jr. Yes, he's struggled, but as we saw last week with Julio Jones, these guys will figure it out, and he's going to figure it out. And like I said, look at last week for a perfect example. Julio Jones blew up. People were losing their minds about Julio Jones. Do not lose your mind about Odell Beckham Jr. He's fine. Like I said, his numbers do not show anything of some sort of regression or anything of that nature. He literally has 3 less targets, 4 less yards, and 2 less touchdowns, and that's it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I tweeted after the game that this is a perfect time to buy low on Odell Beckham because this won't continue, and this is a perfect time at the quarter of the season where people get frustrated with players who they invested high draft picks in and they're not performing. And, you could probably get him for not that much right now, So, yeah, I think it's just important to monitor because we do have to realize now that what's changed from 2015 to 2016 is they got, the weapons back now. Before it was just Odell Beckham or bust. And now, Eli feels like he can throw it to Sterling Shepard. He feels like he can throw it to Victor Cruz. He feels like he can throw it out of the backfield. And the comments are coming out. The comments about his attitude are coming out. So that Odell Beckham is his adversary right now. He's his own adversary. If he's invested into the team, I think it will all fix itself. But if he's going to throw tantrums over, passes not coming his way or, not getting the ball, it'll be a problem. But I still am willing to buy low because the upside is just astronomical with this guy. And this is a perfect time where, you look at a team and, maybe you weren't in a position to draft him because you didn't have that pick. Well, now you're in a position to get him because he's not performing. So for me,
I think people kind of forget that they are top 5 fantasy wide receivers, but that doesn't mean they're top 5 every single week. That means their production on the entire year was top 5. Kevin mentions Julio started last year. I thought he started last year slow, maybe the year before. So last year he starts really hot, right? Then he goes on a lull for 4 games. Then boom, 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 3 games of really hot. And then 3 games on a lull again. And then 3 games really hot. So with these superstar receivers, they're going to be streaky. They're going to have streaks of really good and really bad. If Odell blows up this week, it's likely he blows up for several weeks in a row. And that's just what you're going to get out of these guys. That's how these fantasy guys are. I mean, that's just.
Well, we talked about it before the show, too. Look at Julio Jones last week. Julio Jones, I think, was 36th in the league in yards. He's number 1 now. Obviously, a 300-yard game will do that. But he also went from, the same thing as a fantasy wide receiver to number 1 in 1 week. That's the floor. That's the ceiling for these guys. That's why you keep them. You don't get rid of them because that's their ceiling. 95% of players in this league could never even imagine or dream to reach that sort of ceiling or that sort of production for these guys. But these guys like Antonio Brown and Julio Jones and Odell Beckham, that's what their ceiling is. They can do those insanely crazy games like that. They can do that. You're not going to see that from a lot of these other guys because you're just never going to see that sort of production. But these guys are so uber talented that they can do it. That's why you don't sell these guys. That's why you either draft them or buy them, and that's it. You never sell a Julio Jones or an Odell Beckham Jr. Unless you just get absolutely blown away where you can't refuse it, you don't make the move because it's always going to blow up in your face. Because as soon as those guys get going, you're going to kick yourself. What the hell was I thinking to move on from Julio Jones or Odell Beckham or whoever the case may be?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Anything else before we go ahead and close out the show?
I'm happy the Chiefs are on bye this week.
I bet you are, Kev. I bet you are.
The Steelers hope to keep rolling against the Jets at home. My Miami Dolphins have the Titans at home. Maybe we'll pick up a win. Lots of good things being said by Adam Gase, but I'd like to see some wins more than anything.
Playing for the number 1 pick there. That's the game for the number 1 pick.
Yeah. It sure is. Now the Browns got the number 1 pick locked up already 4 weeks in. All right, guys. Unfortunately, we are out of time for today. Thank you so much for joining us. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to check us out on Twitter at @FF_authority or go ahead and rate, and review the show on iTunes or Stitcher. Just go ahead on there and search the Fantasy Authority. We will pop right up. We really appreciate any reviews you can give us. As always, you can reach us on Sundays for our TFA Game Day show with any lineup questions or advice that you may need. We are on at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time right up until kickoff. So get your questions answered. We try to answer every single question that comes our way. We usually do a pretty good job, I say. And, most of the people in the chat have a good time. We usually have quite a few people in here chatting it up. We do it on YouTube. So feel free to join us each Sunday, 11:30 a.m. Eastern. That is all the time we have for tonight. Sorry, I don't want to say that again. For Kevin Steele and Ryan Williams, I am Anthony Penzone. Thank you so much for listening, and have an awesome night, everyone. That's not how the ending goes. Let me try that again. For Kevin Steele and Ryan Williams, I am Anthony Penzone. This has been another episode of the Fantasy Authority Podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and have an awesome night, everyone.